Hey guys, welcome to Bev and Beyond. Today we're doing something pretty exciting. Thanks to the work done by the MS43 development crew, we can now tune our MS43 equipped BMWs. So we can do EWS deletes, we can modify all the fuel, ignition maps, throttle maps, knock settings, launch control, basically whatever you can think of we can probably do. This right now at the time of filming only applies to MS43 equipped BMWs. In the future that might extend to MS42 and possibly MS45, but probably not. That's not that big a deal because most of the time you can just convert back to MS43 anyway. Anyway, let's get started. You're going to need a couple of tools. That would be some Torx bits or an Allen bit depending on your configuration. A laptop, preferably Windows XP. It tends to play nicely with all our drivers. And the last thing you'll need for this is a cable. Any generic cable that works with INPA should work with this. So if you have one already, you basically have everything you need. And you should also get some sort of battery charger to keep the battery topped up while we're flashing. It's not 100% necessary, but I would definitely use one, especially if you're doing a full flash. If you're doing a 64K flash and your battery is at full charge, you can get away with not using one, but if you can use one, it'll save you a big headache. Let's get started. Before we start flashing anything, let's get our basics down. The MS43 DME, or the digital motor electronics, is the car's ECU. So we're going to be flashing the full ECU.bin. So this is a 512 kilobit file, and it has basically everything on the DME. So our EWS information, our VIN information, our tunes, and as a subset of that 512 kilobit file, you have a 64 kilobit file. So basically the last 64 Ks, and that has our tunes, our ignition, our injection, throttle maps, etc. So there's two pieces of software we'll be using. JM Garage Flasher we'll be using to flash our full 512K file, and Galletto we'll be using to flash our 64K file. Now Galletto has its own special cable, but it's easy to spoof it. You can use any INPA cable as long as it has the FTDI chip and you have the appropriate drivers, and I'll show you how to modify your Galletto to accept that cable. But first we're going to have to get to the ECU so we can put it in boot mode. The way we do that is we'll be grounding a certain pin on the actual circuit board, and by doing that we'll be forcing the ECU to go to boot mode once we do an ignition sequence. I'll demonstrate that later. Then we can flash the 512K file provided by the MS43 development team. This will disable EWS, this will disable checksum, so when we're uploading our later tunes we don't have to keep on correcting the checksums. And we'll even be including launch control. There's actually 6 or so different versions of the MS43. We'll be focusing on the MS43 revision 56. This is the least complicated one. It has full support, and we should be able to incorporate any features we want into it. Right now they're working on flex fuel map sensors, so those that are working with Boost will be very, very happy to hear that this is all being given away for free. So it's pretty important to appreciate what they've done. I'm just psyched to try launch control right now. So let's get to removing the DME cover, pulling out the DME, taking it out of its casing to prepare to put it in boot mode so we can flash our 512K file. Let's do it.
First, you'll need to get a tool to remove the Allen head bolts. There are 4 of them, so loosen them all and remove them. Put them someplace you won't lose them. Then you can take off the DME cover, and that will expose the DME and the wires. To remove the connectors on the DME, you'll need to get something to push down on the little tab, then slide the lever down and it will eject the connector right out. The 2 on the ends only have a tab that you push and then pull to remove. Once you free the DME, put it on a table and flip it over to expose the 4 Torx screws. Remove these to gain access to the bare DME. Be careful of electrostatic discharge while handling the DME, as it could damage something. Observe the same precautions as you would when putting together a computer system, as that's basically what this is.
Alright, so we got our ECU out of its protective shell. Before we go on, let's talk about the MS43 a little bit more. I said before there are different software versions and revisions. This is actually currently on software version 66. Now, 66 doesn't have the support that 56 does, so we're actually doing a full flash, and that's what JM Garage Flasher is for, and we're going to flash that 512 KB file onto the ECU. To do that, you have to put it in boot mode, and to put it in boot mode, you have to plug it in. You actually don't have to plug it in all the way, just one of the connectors. And you have to apply a ground, a good proper ground, to one of the pins on the circuit board. Apply your ignition for about 3 seconds, then you can remove the ground and the ECU will be in boot mode. Then you can read the original file off of your ECU. That original file has your EWS information, your VIN. I would keep that file somewhere safe. Maybe put it on a micro SD card and stick it somewhere safe with the rest of your car paperwork in case you ever want to go back. Then we'll be flashing the revisions 56 software on here. That has the EWS delete. It also has checksum disable, and that comes with a standard tune. So a standard MS43 tune for whatever motor you have, whether it be an M54 B20 or an M54 B25, B30, you get the gist. Now we can put the ECU back in the car once you've taken the protective shell off, and then we can prepare to put it in boot mode. For that, we're going to need just a cable. I have this one right here, and it's stranded copper, so it'll be easy to ground the pin. So this will attach to a good ground on the body, and then when it comes time, we will apply ground to the correct pin on the ECU, apply the ignition for about 3 seconds, remove the ground, and then we're ready to flash our big 512K file. Once we do that, we can start messing with the tune. So let's get this thing connected. Alright, so now we're ready to put the ECU in boot mode. It's important you hook up connectors 1 and 4. They're labeled on the inside. 1 is closest to the firewall and 4 is the one right before the connection furthest away from the firewall, as you can see here. And then you will have to ground the pins. I'll put a screen overlay that'll show you exactly which pin you have to ground. Alright, so we're ready to put our ECU in boot mode. I don't know if you can see, but there's this black wire that's connected to the ground that runs along the engine bay right to our ECU. And there's a little bit of an exposed electrode right there. And the goal is to ground that on a certain pin, and basically all we have to do is take this wire that's grounded to an engine ground, or a proper ground rather, and apply it to this pin right here. Then, while it's applied, turn on the ignition, wait 3 to 6 seconds, then remove the ground, and then you'll be in boot mode and you'll be ready to read and write the ECU. Proceed to apply a solid ground to the boot pin on the ECU. Turn on the ignition and continue applying the ground. While applying the ground, click Connect on your computer and wait for the software to establish a connection with the ECU. Once a connection is established, you can remove the ground. This may take a few tries before you succeed, and it's advisable to get someone to help you while you're applying the ground to click Connect. Obviously my computer is not connected to the ECU because I've already flashed the file to my car. Now you can begin to dump a copy of your original ECU software onto your computer by clicking Read. It should take a few minutes to complete. After you successfully obtained a copy of the original software, you can go to Save and save it to your computer. Give it a meaningful name you'll remember and don't lose it. Navigate to Open and then select the full bin provided by the MS43 dev team that should be 512Ks in size. Proceed to click Write and allow the software to do its job and be patient. After it's completed, you can turn off the ignition, reassemble the ECU into its housing, and reconnect it to the car. Verify that the car still starts and functions normally. If all is well, then tuning can begin. We're going to need to obtain a base tune to work off of, so begin by opening up Galletto and selecting MS43 from the options. Click on ECU data to verify that the software is communicating with the ECU. If you're unable to communicate, you may have to spoof Galletto into thinking you have a genuine cable. On my Windows 8 machine, I used the drivers that installed automatically and had no issue, but on my Windows XP netbook, spoofing was required. Your mileage may vary. Check the description for a write-up on how to spoof your cable to work with Galletto. Assuming you can communicate with the ECU, you can click Read and designate a location for the 64K dump. After a couple of minutes, you should have successfully read the ECU and be left with this bin 64K in size, or 32K if you're an MS42. Now we can begin tuning. Make a copy of this file and store it somewhere safe in case you need to go back to stock. Proceed to open up Tuner Pro, then select a copy of your stock tune, and select the included XDF file to decode the bin into something we can understand and read. In this DIY, I won't be getting into the specifics of tuning itself, so for now we're just going to do a couple of basic tweaks. Use the drop down to limit to level 1 to make things easier. First, let's enable forced OBD readiness for emissions testings. This will force the car into saying the emission systems are ready, regardless if they're even there or not. If you're running catless headers, it'll also disable the check engine light due to missing cats. If you hover over an option, it'll give you information of what it does. Next, we'll slightly bump up the red line to 6,800 RPM. If you have an M54B30, be careful as these motors have a tendency to die of oil pump nut failure, and that happens because of harmonic vibration. If you have an M54B30, you should probably secure your oil pump nut before increasing your rev limiter. You can use the plus and minus keys to increase values. To finalize this brief tune, we'll slightly lower the RPM for launch control to about 2,500 RPM to be less mean to my clutch. Obviously you can do much more with these tools, but that's outside the realm of this DIY, and you'll want to be careful as you can quickly harm your car if you don't know what you're doing. There are plenty of resources online if you want to get serious about tuning. Now you can save your modified bin and give it a name you'll remember. At this point you can open up Galletto. Turn on the ignition and then verify that you have a communication link. Click Open and navigate to the file we just made and select it. Click Write and let it write to the ECU. After it finishes writing, you'll get a pop-up that instructs you to turn off the ignition and wait 10 seconds. At this point you can turn off the ignition and click OK. Now you can click OK and proceed to start the car. If all is well, and you have successfully tuned your car to the parameters you set earlier. This is the part where you celebrate.
Alright, so that basically sums up what's involved in tuning your BMW. Now, remember, the specifics apply only to MS43 equipped BMWs, but the idea and the concepts probably apply to a bunch of other cars. Anything that uses Tuner Pro for tuning probably has a similar process. Now, a couple of problems you might run into. Programs have a tendency to freeze sometimes, and people get a tendency to panic.
Don't panic when something freezes. It's probably still working in the background, it's just the interface is frozen, and if you start clicking, Windows will automatically just shut it down. So if you're writing to your ECU and the program freezes completely, you're gonna have a brick on your hands. So leave it be for a couple of minutes, it'll probably be fine. My programs froze a couple of times in the making of the video. Big thanks to the MS43 dev team. They work really hard on this, and there's a lot of reverse engineering that goes into it, so make sure you give them a big thanks. If you check the description, you'll find the download link for all the programs I use, all the definitions and XDFs, a thread and discussion about the whole thing, troubleshooting thread, and the write-up for Spoofing Galletto. If you like what you see, leave a thumbs up. If you want to see what's coming up next, follow us on Instagram or like our Facebook page, and I always throw pictures on there and you can see a sneak peek of what's coming. Until then, have fun, be safe. I'm not responsible for anything you break. And thanks for watching.